all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. Thank you for being here. You all intended to be here, I take it? Yes? Good. It's talked a little bit about it on Saturday, but just the nature of the season and the week and all that kind of stuff. Really, just an opportunity I find during these what are often referred to as the holiday season. Chances for all of us to kind of reflect. These are wonderful, happy times for a lot of people, and for a lot of people, they're also very sad, lonely, depressing, miserable times. So we've always seen both sides of, again, what's called the holiday season. And wherever side you fall on or wherever you are along that spectrum, I think it's, regardless, a good opportunity for all of us to just kind of reflect on a little bit of our own gratitude that we have for the people that have influenced us in our lives, regardless as well of what that influence may have been. I'm sure all of us in this room have had people that influenced us in a positive way. We've also probably had people in this room, or those of us in the room have had people who've influenced us in maybe not so positive of a way. And so these have been opportunities and experiences to learn from those people that have come into our lives. But either way, it's really a chance to just kind of stop and think about what people have come into our lives at various points, and who are we grateful for? And for me, it's always been a really beautiful practice to just sit and abide in a place of gratitude. I think it's something that's often overlooked throughout our days. I think I said this exact same thing on Saturday or similar to it, but most of us probably don't wake up each day and as we're preparing our breakfast. Did you all eat today? Breakfast? Anyone in this room that did not eat? So we all had the ability to eat, whether we chose to eat or not. And very rarely do we stop and just kind of pause and say, wow, I'm grateful for the simple fact that I am able to eat. I'm grateful for the simple fact that I have the means to be able to eat. I'm grateful for the fact that I have the ability to maybe get up and use my arms and legs and hands and whatever is required to be able to eat. We don't typically stop and reflect on those things. Very often we settle into, and it's at different points for everybody throughout their day, but very often we settle into this mindset of what's not working, or what's not good, or what do I need, or what do I want, or what's not going how I want it to. And so that's where I think gratitude is really important, especially if you begin to start the day that way. And it could just be little things. I mean, you could wake up and pour a glass of water and just say, wow, I'm grateful that I'm able to just have a glass of water that's relatively fresh and clean and not going to kill me. So whatever it might be, I think, maybe as you go throughout this evening and start day tomorrow, hopefully we all wake up tomorrow, maybe start your day tomorrow with just this kind of reflecting on what am I grateful for this morning. So as we start our meditation practice here in a few moments, and if your mind is going to wander, which it probably will because you're human and you're breathing and you have a brain and it's going to wander, try to allow it to wander to what, or more specifically, who in your life that you have gratitude for. And then, of course, once it starts wandering into story time, try to let go of that story and come back to breath. And as it wanders again, try to let it wander to who in your life are you grateful for, and then try to come back to breath. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll start the meditation practice. There's a couple things I'll tell you before we begin. For those who might be new to meditation practice, or maybe sitting here for the first time, a couple things. Nothing's going to happen to you. All right, you're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice when you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Am I doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. So don't expect anything other than sitting and breathing. Posture. You want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a bench or a chair, same thing. Just trying to push the stomach forward slightly, keeping yourself upright. Relaxing the shoulders. Hands will be on the knees or in the lap, whatever is comfortable. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator, it just means you have an itch or your leg hurts. So just simply move as necessary, then return to stillness. I will guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after, and compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize how you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your days. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice, not necessarily fun. Meditation is not an escape, as often people think it is. It's not getting lost in your head. It's direct perception into the present moment. And sometimes that present moment is incredibly difficult. So it's learning to be with life as it is. It's becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. And the reality that everything you think and say and do has an impact on the world around you. All your thoughts, all your words, all your actions impact everything around you. This is what the Buddha called karma. This is simply action. Karma is not getting what you deserve. Karma is not what goes around comes around. Karma is what you bring into the world. And every thought, word, and action has an effect on something or someone. And so the practice is to become very mindful of how your thoughts and words and actions impact those around you. And beginning to watch how the law of cause and effect plays out. Almost beginning to see it well before it happens. And I'm not talking about some weird, like, seeing into the future type stuff, but understanding and looking at, just based on experience, past thoughts and words and actions. But we cannot determine the law of cause and effect, and we cannot determine exactly what's going to happen in the future based on our present time thoughts and words and actions. We can often get a pretty good idea of what's going to happen from our thoughts and words and actions. Many times because we've just done it so many times. So any sort of habitual patterns or behaviors, we begin to recognize that as we have similar thoughts and words and actions, we very often know what the outcome is going to be. We very often know what the result is going to be. And so meditation helps you become aware of the present moment in each thought and word and action as it occurs. So we can then alter and change our thoughts and words and actions. I said just to somebody a few hours ago, we were talking, they were asking about this, place here and what we do, and they were asking about meditation. And I said, sure, I get it that, I don't know, this is a very rough guess, but 90% of the people from the last 15 years that have shown up to the Dharma Bum Temple, maybe 80%, I'm also guessing, show up because they want to learn about meditation. And what I shared with this individual was something that I heard Karma Lekshi Somo is a wonderful, just human friend, teacher, a Tibetan Buddhist nun, also professor at USD. and she gave a talk many years ago at USD, and she was talking about mindfulness, kind of the buzz of the mindfulness movement in this culture, and this word mindfulness, and everyone's all wrapped up in being more mindful. And she said, mindfulness without moral and ethical conduct and behavior only gets you so far. A lot of very traditional Buddhists, monks, nuns, lamas, practitioners are not huge fans of the mindfulness movement. She went on to say that you could mindfully kill somebody. You could mindfully rob a bank. So a lot of things you can do mindfully, but if you don't bring in moral and ethical conduct and behavior, you're not practicing Buddhism. So the meditation aspect of it only gets you so far. But as we say, when you get off of the cushion, just a metaphor, or the pew, or the chair, or whatever you're doing your meditation in or on, right? What are you doing off of the cushion? That's what really matters. Sitting and breathing in your meditation is just sitting and breathing in your meditation, but what are you doing outside of that? And so as a practitioner, that's what we look at. And sometimes that's difficult because it requires us to look very honestly at our actions and behaviors. And very often, again, no accusations or judgments on anyone in this room. I'm really just speaking towards myself because I know what led me to this practice and this path. But very often, those of us who end up being interested in meditation and Buddhist practice have quite a decent history of doing things that are not so kind and compassionate towards self or others. And so we don't always want to look at that because sometimes it's like not fun to look at what a mean, angry, selfish person you are. I mean, that's not always pleasant. But to be able to do that with gentleness and kindness and love for yourself is really important. And it becomes just reminders of things to practice and to work on that, hey, this is how I was, or this is how I am. These are thoughts I have. These are things that I ponder. And how can I continue to work through these so I don't keep harming myself or harming others? So the awareness of it is critical. Awareness of your own thoughts and words and actions, not judgment, not critique, not putting yourself down or thinking you're a bad person because you have thoughts that aren't so kind, right? But just the awareness. So, as I talked about at the beginning of tonight, to bring that back into this is to also then just settle into gratitude for the journey that you're on. Whatever spiritual path you're on, whatever led you here, you've survived all of that, and here you are. So you still have an opportunity to continue to practice and just be grateful for all the experiences that you've had that have led you to a moment of saying, you know what, I want to make some changes in my life. Or I want things to be different in my life, because again, most people don't show up to meditation Buddhist places because they're perfectly happy and thrilled with how things are. Most people get into stuff like this because they want to explore a more meaningful life, a life with greater sense of purpose or happiness or joy or whatever it might be. It's different for everybody. But most people don't think everything is wonderful. I'm going to go check out that Buddhist stuff. So. Or if you are one of those people, which do occur periodically, and you actually learn what the Buddha was teaching, then you start to recognize, oh, wait, maybe I'm not as perfect as I thought I was. There's also those folks. So with that, I'll pause. As always, I just prefer to really respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind. And we use the rest of the time this evening that we have, and I'll just respond and address your questions or thoughts. So we'll open up to that.
Regarding the middle path,
Yes.
I was wondering if there was any sutras or teachings on the Buddha addressing did he acknowledge that and I don't even know if it's part of Buddhism, like a lot of times the extremes shift and then the middle might shift because of the extremes. Like, is there, it's something that occurred to me while thinking about something called the Overton window, which is like a way they push extremes to make extreme ideas seem like the middle. Like, but anyway, I was like, oh, well, I wonder if, like, I just don't know. So
yeah, no, great question. The question for those who didn't hear it, maybe in our millions of YouTube followers, is around the middle path and the Buddhist teachings on the middle path, and then going into, can the middle path change, right? Well, that's an easy part, and then I'll kind of back up. But of course, the middle path will change based on what your extremes are. So if your one extreme is here and one extreme is here, here's the middle, right? But if this extreme becomes all the way over here, then your middle is going to shift a bit, right? It's really hard to put that into a very, specific response or answer, because if here and here creates the middle, and now all of a sudden this is over here, maybe you want to bring it back a little bit and leave the middle here instead of extending your middle just to kind of meet the madness. And I'm just using my own words there, right? But let's go back to the Buddhist teachings. And for you or anybody who might not be familiar with it, are you familiar with the Emaciated Buddha and the story?
Yeah, before his enlightenment.
Right, and his discovering of the middle path.
Yeah.
So I'll tell it anyways for anyone who might not know. But this, I think, is really where the teachings begin with the middle path. And that, so the statue we have here on the main shrine is called the Emaciated Buddha. And it's not the Buddha as the awakened, enlightened Buddha that we all think of and know, but it's the Buddha as Siddhartha Gautama, the struggling ascetic who was near death. And at this time, this is 2,500 years ago, so 500 years before Christ, there they were as, young ascetics in India, and they were trying to, figure out all the answers to everything and enlightenment like everybody else. And so he had left home at 29, being a prince for 29 years. He left home. He roams the base of the Himalayan mountains for 6 years, doing all kinds of crazy practices. And at that point in time in India, they thought that if you overcame attachment to the physical body, that meant you could awaken. And so they did a lot of pretty bizarre things. One of them was, they would stand on one leg for hours or days or weeks or months at a time. They would hang from a tree for long periods of time. A lot of kind of yogi practices challenging the body. And another one was, it said that he lived on 1 grain of rice a day. And so he became so emaciated that you could take your 2 fingers, one in the front, one in the back, and you could push and they would touch. That's how emaciated he was. So definitely not healthy. And then the story is he came to a riverbed and he was with his 5 buddies and they were all practicing together. And someone had offered them some food, like some porridge, a bowl of food. And they were all like, no, we can't eat. And so he says, well, I'm hungry. I mean, I don't know that he actually said that, but something along those lines. And so he said, well, I'm going to take this bowl, I'm going to put it in the stream. And if the bowl goes against the stream, which in Buddhism is often referred to against the stream, I'll talk about that in a minute. But if it goes against the stream, then I'm going to eat. So he puts the bowl that goes against the stream, he takes the food, he decides to eat. Those 5 guys, they left him. They were like, oh, that's Siddhartha, he's a sellout, he's a traitor, I can't believe he would eat, we're not supposed to be eating. But he was near death. And so if he hadn't discovered, which is the nature of your question around the middle path, if he hadn't discovered the middle path, then he would have never awakened to the way that we know it, right? Now, he then went on to teach for 45 years and he died when he was 80. It's important to understand here, really back to your question, which is that middle path is different for all of us. And it's always going to move. And there's no concrete, definitive middle, right? How many shirts do you have? Give me a ballpark guess.
30.
30. Okay. You almost look embarrassed by
conservative number.
So you're lying to me, is what you're telling me.
I can't.
This is not a precept talk on no line, right? So you have 30 shirts. All right, let's see who else wants to play the honest game here. Anyone have like way more than 30? Thank you very much for your honesty. So how many do you think you have? 100. I was going to say, give me at least 60, so my example works, but you're making it easy on me. You got 100. How many shirts?
200.
200. Wow, I feel like we're in like a bidding war or something. I saw another hand over. It's like an auction, you know. Give me. Who? I saw another hand over here who has more than 30 shirts. How many? A few hundred. All right. So we got. So we got 30.
I was thinking dress shirts, man.
Just shirts total. You want to up your number now?
Yes, I do.
To what?
Probably close to 200.
200 shirts. All right. So 30 to 200 to 100 to 200, right? So now, who here has like 20 shirts? Okay. So some of you have 20 shirts, right? So the middle path for someone who has 20 shirts is to recognize maybe they could live on just 10. The middle path for, you know, and I would have been in your category many years ago as well, for the ones who have 100 or 200 shirts. If you have 200 shirts, you're probably okay with 100, right? So, hang on, right, before you jump into, so it's finding that balance, okay? What were you going to say? Go ahead.
I was wondering if the middle path then is always reductionist. Because it doesn't have to be.
You're thinking too much.
Okay.
So the question is the middle path reductionist, right? I don't even really understand what reductionist means, but I know the word reduction, like reduce, does it have to do with decreasing?
Yeah.
The middle path is about finding a healthy balance, not about reducing, okay? My master used to say that to become a monk, it's not about shaving your head and putting on a robe. The renunciate path, which the Buddha chose, is not about getting rid of all your stuff or reducing the amount of clothes that you have. You could still, good news for all you 200 shirt people, you could still practice Buddhism and have 200 shirts. The question is, are you attached to the 200 shirts? Could you actually function on 100? What if you gave away some of them? What would that be like? That's really what it's about. It's not, so to answer your question, I would say no. It's not about a number. It's not about getting to a number of shirts. It's about recognizing, why do you have them? Do you need them all? What happens if you lose some of them? What happens if you gave some of them away? Right? That's what it's really about. It's non-attachment. So whether you have one shirt or 200 shirts isn't the practice. I know for me, when I first got into Buddhism, I went this full-on extreme approach of like, I got to get rid of everything. All the money, all the houses, all the clothes, all the cars. I got to get rid of all of it. Man, that was stupid. Because if I kept all of that, you know how much good I could have done with it? I wasted it before on stupid stuff that fed the ego and fed pride. Look at my shirt. How cool do I look in this shirt? Well, not cool enough. I'm going out Friday. I better go buy another one. Right? It wouldn't have mattered how many shirts. It's about that feeling.
Yeah.
The attachment of, oh, I look good in this shirt. I look bad in that shirt. You don't look any different, dude. All you're projecting is, what are other people going to think of me in this shirt or in these clothes or in these shoes, anything. All right? So it's not the shaved head and the robe that matters. It's the attachment to these things. And so with that in mind, then of course the middle path and the, where you settle in the middle is going to change and almost goes away, because it's not about the number of things or the quantity, if that makes any sense. Does that help me?
Yeah.
And so looking at the Buddha's life, he went from being a prince. He had all the wealth, all the riches, all the everything in the world, and he renounced all of that. But that doesn't mean that one must renounce all of those things, Money can do really beautiful things for people. Clothes can do really beautiful things for people, right? A lot of people out there with no money, no clothes, no shoes that other people could benefit from. And then the real challenge is when you start, hearing this enough and you're like, all right, I got 100 shirts. I'm going to get rid of some of them. But then you're like, no, not that one, right? That's where you begin to see where the real attachment comes into play. Like, okay, I'll get rid of 30 shirts this weekend, but it's going to be the 30 that I haven't touched in 5 years. Can you get rid of the ones that you actually like? So if you get rid of all the clothes you don't like, then you're still really attached.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good luck. Yeah. Other questions? Should do a clothing drive this weekend, I think. Yeah.
Two-part question on
Yeah.
breath. One, why is it so common that breath is used as an object for meditation?
Yeah.
And then two, are there any just common causes of why it's so difficult to just keep the breath mindful? Sometimes I'm 10 minutes and I'm like, when is this over?
Right. Yeah. So the question, I think, just to repeat, is the first part is why is the breath such a common use or focus of meditation, right? And then the second part is why is it so difficult to stay focused on breath? Because like 10 minutes in, you're thinking like, okay, is it over yet? Or whatever the thought may be. Yeah. Okay. So I always will default just to my knowledge, my practice, what I was taught on meditation and the breath. And so the Buddhist teachings on breath with the Anapanasati Sutra is where he talks about when breathing in and taking a short breath, know you're breathing in and taking a short breath. Breathing out, taking a long breath, know you're breathing out, taking a long breath. So it was simple observation of breath. That was the first thing at the temple I went to that they taught me on breath, and I never learned anything else. And I've never practiced personally anything else. Doesn't mean I haven't been exposed or seen or heard or whatever, but for me, that's always been the practice, that breath, and partially what I've learned, partially what I've just added on and made up over the years, is that breath is always there. It's the one thing that's always with you. When you don't have the breath, you don't have to worry about meditation anymore, right? The breath is free. The breath doesn't require an app. The breath doesn't require a plane ride to some other country. You can sit everywhere you are, anywhere you are, and that breath is right there. It is the simplest, most free thing that is always there to use as a focus. I give examples of other things that are wonderful to focus on for meditation, right? A candle flickering, a flower, an incense stick burning. These are all wonderful things to use during meditation to focus on, but there are also things that require you going to get something. That might not be that difficult to acquire those things, but the breath can be used anywhere without having to schedule a trip or go and do anything. So that's where I learned the practice of breathing from the Buddhist teachings. That to me, in my practice, is why it's always been so important and so practical, because there it is. It's that kind of wherever you go, there you are. Well, wherever you are, there's your breath. So that's it. Does that make sense so far?
Yep.
And then the second part of why is it so difficult? Because you're human and our minds are an absolute mess. And we spend all day long thinking about a billion things. And I forget the stats, maybe you've seen them recently, but somewhere, you could Google or research how many thoughts we have in a minute or whatever. There's all kinds of research out there, and it's a lot. Right? So imagine, and I'm not a big physics dude, and I don't even know if I've ever given this metaphor or example before, but Newton, right, said a body in motion stays in motion. Is that anyone smart know that stuff? Is that right? Is that correct? All right. So think of the thoughts the same way. So here you are, at whatever time, nearly 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. You roam into the Dharma Temple at 7 o'clock for meditation. You know how many billions of thoughts you just had? Starting, let's just say, at 7 a.m. this morning until 7 p.m. tonight. Billions. Maybe not billions, but probably pretty close. And then all of a sudden we sit down at 7 o'clock and we're like, all right, I'm going to do a meditation. Oh, gee, I wonder why I can't focus on my breath. Because we've been doing a billion other things all day long that we've been focused on. So then when we get to having to focus on one thing, Zen practice called single-minded focus, it becomes really difficult. Make sense? Then the question is, well, how do I change that? How do I get to a place in my practice to where the moment I sit down for seated meditation, I can just as simply or quickly, I should say, drop into attention and focus on sensation and breath? Because that to me is really the key to this question is, okay, well, how do I then cultivate a practice of meditation where I'm not just sitting here thinking for 20 minutes, waiting for the dude to hit the bell, right? And the practice is to bring your meditation into everything you're doing all day long. So every time you eat, you're just focused on eating. Every time you talk, you're focused on the conversation. Every time you walk, you're focused on the walking. Everything you are doing throughout your day is your meditation practice. That Zen expression of chop wood, carry water. If you're chopping wood, just chop wood. Because I'm sure you've all chopped wood recently, right? If you're carrying water, just carry water. Whatever you're doing, just do that. Most of us are doing 12 things at once, and they're all right here, you know? And then we wonder why we can't focus on breath. Because we don't practice. And I don't like to look at meditation or Buddhism as like being good or bad, because it's not, to me, about being good or bad at it. But if we're struggling at concentrating on breath when we're sitting, that means we're struggling at staying focused throughout the rest of our day with everything we're doing. So once you recognize that there's no separation, that this seated meditation practice is no different than everything you did all day long, once you close that gap and you develop a level of concentration and focus in everything you're doing, to where whatever you're doing, you are 1000% into that. Nothing else is there. And you just get so they use athletes a lot with Olympic athletes or things like that. But there's, in that zone, there's that focus where you're just in that one moment. But that one moment is repeating moment after moment after moment. So, does that help? It's a practice. Yeah. Other thoughts, questions?
So this is going to be kind of vague, but what about the connection between like the Eastern way of thinking and like the adaptation? Like you spoke about the mindfulness movement with like DBT and CBT and mental health treatment as a whole, as opposed to just like going to the source. That's kind of like honestly what I'm searching for.
Sure. The source?
Yeah. Just trying to cut through all the human side of it,
You can't cut through the human side of it. You're human, right?
Well, I'm saying like
Less,
the corruption of it,
but nothing's corrupt. I mean, with what you're getting at, right? Just because the mindfulness movement has become a $1 trillion industry doesn't mean the practice of mindfulness is bad. But there's a difference. I'll get to the nature of your question, but I just want to clarify this. The mindfulness movement, I'm a huge fan of the mindfulness movement, right? Everything I just said, I'm really glad it's happening because it's a start. You know how many millions of people meditate because of the mindfulness movement? So they might still lie, cheat, and steal, but before they had no meditation practice. Now they meditate and they lie, cheat, and steal. But at least they meditate. I call those baby steps, right? The story I told earlier about Carmelexi, who said, you could mindfully all those things, that's all true. But you got to start somewhere, right? Where I caution you at is thinking that again, I'm not suggesting that you were inferring this, but I've been around this long enough and heard these questions long enough. What you sound like is someone who's ready to go buy a ticket to Nepal and fly off tomorrow, thinking that if you go to Nepal and learn meditation and Buddhism, that means it's going to be better. I'm not suggesting you are, but what I'm saying is you don't have to go anywhere. The source is just sitting and breathing and being kind. That's it. The source of all of this stuff you learned in 2nd grade. Did you go to school in America? You learned everything the Buddha taught for the most part in 2nd grade in America. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. Be honest. Don't lie. Don't cheat. Don't steal. For the most part, all religions are teaching everything the Buddha taught. The difference is we just didn't do them. And now here we are interacting with Buddhism later on in life. And for whatever reason, our other spiritual or religious journey hasn't brought us what we were seeking. And so now we kind of find this Eastern thing, and we think this ancient Eastern, faraway land, old Buddhist stuff has all the answers. It doesn't have the answers. What's your name? Will. You know who has the answers? Will. You know what will help you the most? A mirror. Because when you look in a mirror, what do you see?
A reflection of myself.
Reflection of yourself. Which is, of course, not your true self, but it's a reflection of yourself. But that reflection is what we're bringing into the world every day. All right? So, while I don't love the fact that the mindfulness movement has become the industry it's become, and all the money generated from it and all that kind of stuff, I still think it's a start. And in this country, Suzuki Roshi was a great Zen priest, Buddhist teacher, built San Francisco Zen Center. He says when Buddhism goes into a new country, it takes 200 years for Buddhism to take root in a new country. That's how difficult it is. Now, if you look at everything the Buddha taught, talk about going against the stream, right? Where I talk about the bowl and he puts it in, he goes against the stream. I said I'd come back to it. I forgot until just now. But Buddhist teachings and American culture are about as opposite as it gets. It really, really is. And maybe that's part of also the nature of your question, or somewhere in there, is that yes, this culture is not practicing or teaching as a whole what Buddhism teaches. And so it becomes incredibly difficult, right? I mean, you weren't born and took 7 steps and said, I want 100 shirts, right? We learned all of that stuff. And not just American culture, lots of cultures teach that, but specifically here. So, does that help at all? Does that address what you're thinking? Do you want to elaborate, respond?
No, kind of, yeah. It's good.
Yeah. The part that, and maybe when you talk about the source, right? Expand on what do you mean by that? Like the source of what? Like the source of the teachings?
The source of accepting, the things that we've experienced, kind of free for myself.
Yeah.
From feeling being chained by those things, being able to sit and live and actually be alive instead of just, this biological thing. It's just doing what it's supposed to do.
Right. Yeah, that's a pretty deep philosophical thought to have. And again, for me, my experience and within Buddhist practice as a Zen practitioner, I don't think about that at all. I used to think about that. And then I discovered Zen practice. And it made my life a hell of a lot easier. Because I used to sit around with all my friends pondering all of that and reading philosophy and all that kind of stuff. And you know what it did? It drove me insane. Made my head hurt. Because I thought I could figure it all out. I thought I could get the answer. Right? Anytime I hear someone say the source, I'm like, okay, I don't know where this is. I don't mean that in a bad way, but it could be going in a million different directions. But it sounds like there's a lot of trying to figure stuff out. And one of the most liberating life experiences for me within Zen Buddhist practice is there is nothing to figure out. There's just the experience of each moment. And that in itself is incredibly liberating and freeing, because then I, as a human, get to experience life as it occurs. But as it occurs, I'm not trying to figure it all out. I'm not trying to dissect it and break it down and analyze it and understand the grand meaning of it all. You know? Another great Zen expression is, when hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. That's as simple as it gets, my friend. So you kind of let go of the trying to figure stuff out. Because even if you think you have figured it out, you haven't. That's just your mind telling you you've intellectually or philosophically figured something out. But
Just a really quick
Yeah.
comment. But I feel like most people on their spiritual journey don't just jump right to there's nothing to figure out.
They don't.
It's, you go to India, you do all the things, you do all the research, you have all those philosophical conversations, you read all the books, and then, hopefully not too many decades later, you're like, oh, really, this is it. So,
yes, but wouldn't it be nice if you could just save all those decades of years of struggle?
I'm not so sure.
So, well, again, I mean, to each their own path, right? I'm not gonna, you can all do what you want, but you're absolutely right. Yes, it does require very often going through all of that. And so as Jeff's sitting up here sharing what I'm sharing, I can only share what I think is the best thing I ever learned, which was stop getting rid of all of your stuff and stop spending years trying to figure shit out. Just be nice to people. That is the greatest spiritual awakening there is. So I'm not disagreeing with you at all. But,
that's why you're facing this way.
I don't know about that, but yeah, it's because yes, I went through all those steps and went to those places and went on those journeys to then sit here and say, like, you don't need to go anywhere. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Anything? Yeah.
I think you made your point. I don't want to beat the horse.
No, please go ahead.
But-
Not beat the horse, but please go ahead and comment. Yes.
For me, this is really personal because I derive a lot of pleasure from figuring stuff out.
Yeah.
Reading and learning, and I don't see it as an end.
You don't see it as an end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I don't know, would that be compatible with Buddhism as long
Yeah.
as it's stuck that way?
So just to repeat back, just so I understand what you're saying is you draw a lot of pleasure from reading and learning. And you don't see it as like an end, but is that compatible with Buddhist teachings? Yeah, is that kind of what you're saying? Just to clarify for you or anybody that maybe is getting this message, I'm not suggesting that people stop reading or stop learning what the Buddha was teaching or Buddhist books or anything like that. I think, and I don't suggest that we just abandon all of that, because those things are very important, as are, the journeys that you're talking about. And each person is on their own journey. So yes, for some people, it's going to take decade after decade after decade, trip after trip after trip, book after book after book. No matter what I or anybody says, we're still going to, I don't say these things thinking that all these people out here are just going to stop reading Buddhist books, right? Keep reading, keep learning, keep doing all those things that you enjoy, because they will keep you motivated and inspired. And in most cases are incredibly necessary as reminders, right? No matter how many times people tell us to be nice and kind to each other, we still need to be reminded. And understanding, I think, the depth of what the Buddha was teaching is really beautiful. So, and enjoying learning about those things, I think, is phenomenal. My main point is that I believe, based on what I've learned from Buddhist teachings, all of us have already learned on a very practical, common sense level that kindness and compassion is what the entire body of the Buddhist teachings is about. And we all know that. but sometimes we have to read book after book after book because we enjoy it and to be reminded. So does that help?
Okay.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. I'm just pondering whether I want to say one more thing. I'll say it anyways, because I think it's important not just for you, but for anybody. And sometimes we can read many books and benefit from them. And sometimes you could just read one Buddhist book over and over and over again, because you are changing as you evolve. And so the teachings and what we learn are also changing as we evolve. So it could be one book, could be 1,000 books. But whatever it takes, I think is important. So keep at it. Yeah. All right. Good thoughts. We'll join palms as we close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to the more than 4 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic, and to their family and friends who continue to suffer to this day. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So, very quick announcement. Thanks all for being here. I'm Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple nearly 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to local folks. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. So thanks for showing up. Just about every night we have different practices going on, different Buddhist traditions. We have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights here in person, Saturday morning as well. And then our recovery Sangha also meets in person Tuesday nights downstairs and Sunday morning here. We have in-person classes in the morning, Monday through Friday, 8 and 8:30. So there's meditation here every day. There's plenty of stuff going on. Throughout the day, the temple is closed, and then it opens up again in the evening when we have a class. So best to kind of keep up to date on all of that is just go to the website and check the schedule. That'll tell you what's going on, whether it's here in person or Zoom or YouTube or both. Thanks all for being here. Great questions, great thoughts. I appreciate really all of them. It's good stuff to ponder. So thank you all. Be safe, be well, be kind. Good to see you. What's that? The shirts?
I live with him.
What'd you say?
I'm totally going on the